In 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first man to enter space. In 1969, Neil Armstrong became the first human to set foot on the surface of our moon. These were extraordinary accomplishments, and they ushered in the era of human spaceflight. But where was woman when man was beginning to conquer the stars? You've probably heard of Sally Ride, the first American woman in space. She died in 2012 and was rightly lauded as an American hero. You may even have heard of Valentina Tereshkova, who became the first woman in space in 1963, just 2 years after Yuri Gagarin first orbited the Earth. There are many other notable women who flew in space. You may have heard of Mae Jemison, the first African-American woman in space, Judith Resnick, who perished in the Challenger disaster, Helen Sharman, the first British citizen to fly in space, although many media outlets seem to forget this in 2015, when Tim Peake was referred to as the first British astronaut, Kalpana Chawla and Laurel B. Clark, who both died in the Columbia disaster. In total, 59 women have flown in space. But what about the women behind the scenes? An enormous number of women made huge contributions to the development of human spaceflight. Without them, it's possible that humanity would never have reached the moon at all. In the late 1800s, teams of women worked as human computers at the Harvard Observatory, making critical breakthroughs in astronomy. Among these women were Williamina Fleming, Annie Jump Cannon, Henrietta Swan Leavitt, and Antonia Maury. They received very little individual recognition for their work, and instead were collectively known as Pickering's Harem. Although many of these women were astronomy graduates, they were paid less than the average clerical worker. This is Margaret Hamilton. She was the lead flight software designer for Project Apollo. Her work saved the Apollo 11 mission when it was nearly aborted after a computer systems failure. Without Hamilton and her team, Neil Armstrong would never have set foot on the moon. Katherine Johnson is a physicist and mathematician. She calculated the trajectory for the 1969 Apollo 11 flight to the moon. She was considered so accurate that NASA would ask her to manually check the calculations performed by their computers. In 1959, more than 500 of America's most elite pilots applied to become NASA's first astronauts. The successful candidates had to pass strict tests, and they became the famed Mercury 7. All eventually flew on manned orbital space missions. At the same time, a privately funded program invited a group of women to take the same tests as the male astronauts. 13 managed to pass the rigorous tests. All were accomplished pilots, and some even outperformed their male counterparts. This is Jerry Cobb, one of the so-called Mercury 13. She was a pilot with more than 7,000 hours of flying and a world record for distance flying under her belt. During the testing, she broke the record, male and female, for time spent in an isolation tank. According to all tests, she was as qualified as any of the official astronauts. And yet, Jerry never had a chance to go to space. All astronauts were required to be graduates of military jet test piloting programs, and at the time, women were still barred from Air Force training schools. It would be more than 20 years before an American woman flew in space. Almost 50 years later, prospects have improved dramatically for women. In 2016, NASA announced that its latest class of astronauts is half women. 8 people were selected from an application pool of more than 6,000, and 4 of the successful people are women. These women could be among the first people to set foot on Mars. We are fortunate enough to live in a time when this is possible, but we should never forget the women who went before us, those who were denied recognition for their achievements, but helped humanity first leave planet Earth.